All right. So hopefully you're supposed to be ECON B251, Introduction to Economics for Business. I'm Professor Lantis. I got to get used to these new start times. They kind of moving around a little bit. So we start at 9:35. So what we're going to do today is basically just kind of go through the syllabus, cover class expectations. We may have a little bit of time at the end to go through, kind of introduce a little bit of concepts and some material, and then really hit the ground running on Thursday. Okay. So on the Canvas website, before I kind of start jumping into things, you'll kind of see I've already got a lot of files sitting here, right? So I'm going to start working through kind of this lecture one, what is economics complete file. This is basically just slides I'm going to be going through during class. I've also got the actual syllabus posted up there as well. So I'm going to be summarizing a lot of the things in that syllabus. It would likely be a very good idea to at least kind of quickly go through it to kind of pick up anything that I might have left off, or just to like read it in more detail. I've also got some additional things, files up here that I'll mention as I go through stuff. And then all of these files can be found under this Files tab as well. I just pin them to this homepage so that they're a little bit easier to find. Okay. And I'll mention some of the other things that are down here as we progress through class. Okay. So is everybody in the right spot? Hopefully, right? Okay, so what are you going to need for this class, right? So the main requirements that you're going to need is the textbook, which is this e-text through a platform called Top Hat. So I'll mention this more a little bit in a second, but before you register for Top Hat, I'm having some issues with it today that'll hopefully be resolved by Thursday. But the actual textbook for this class, there isn't a physical textbook, it's an e-text. Okay? So we'll be using this not only as the textbook, but also for some additional assignments that we use in class. So this is going to be a very important material that we'll talk about. We're also going to use a platform called PackBag. I'll go into these more in depth here in a second, just kind of briefly giving a summary right now. So you're going to need that. I mean, Canvas, you obviously already have that, so that one's easy for you. But I'm going to post all the files, all the assignments. We'll have links on Canvas. I'll be using Canvas for announcements. Canvas is going to be really where this class lives, right? So that's going to be really important to kind of make sure you're checking Canvas throughout the semester for announcements. Also, you can find all the links to all the assignments. Everything's going to be right there. You're also going to need, for in-class use, something that you can access basically a web browser. So if it's your phone, laptop, tablet, we'll talk more later on, but some of these platforms we're going to be using like in-class questions. And so you're going to need an actual device. Now, I mean, I don't think he's expecting a lot. Most of you are probably on your phone too much during class anyways. And so if you have something in front of you, be honest with yourself, right? Having a laptop open, it's great for taking notes. It's great for following along with my slides. If it's going to be an issue for you, be honest with yourself. Right? If you're going to spend too much time shopping on Amazon, maybe rely on your phone that can be in your pocket, and then you can pull it out when we use it for the in-class stuff, right? But you're going to need something to be able to access a web browser, excuse me, in class throughout the semester, okay? I've got some suggested materials here. This is just a bunch of additional resources if you want them. I don't expect a lot of you will even take a look at this link, but it's just some additional help files for some of the concepts, some of the topics that we'll cover throughout the semester. Some OpenStax. For the everyday class period, this won't be as important because you can use your phone, and unless you've got a phone that's like, I don't even know, even the 20-year-old phones had basic calculators on them. That's fine. You can use your phone's calculator in class. The issue is once we get to exams, which I'll mention later on, we do have some in-person exams, you'll need a physical calculator. You can't use the calculator on your phone. Right? That's an issue during the exam. So you'll need all you need is a 4-function calculator, something that can add, subtract, divide, multiply. Right? Now, I know a lot of you might have something that's a little bit more advanced than that. As long as it's like under a TI 83, I'm fine with using it on the exams. I keep an eye on you enough to know if you're trying to do some shady business, I'll come be able to catch you. But all you really need is a 4-function calculator. Okay. Lecture slides, right? I'll post these every week. So for this first week or first module, I've already got the week 1 kind of lecture up there. I think I called it lecture 1, but generally I'll post these up like a set of slides for the week. So I'll probably rename that after class. I realized after I opened it up when we were starting class, like I should have called this week 1 instead of lecture 1 because it's really lectures 1 and 2. But I'm always going to post these before we cover them in class. So you'll even see I've got, you can't see it yet, but maybe even before Thursday's class, I'll kind of have this published. I'll post up the next module slides so that you'll always have them well in advance, right? You'll have them prior to the classes that we actually go through the slides. Right? Now, the slides that I post this week, notice I put complete. That's because this first week is a little bit different, right? For subsequent weeks, I'm going to post what I call skeleton slides. So I might leave some things off that I cover in class, right? Which makes class attendance, incentivizes it a little bit. I also do a lot of work, and we won't really use it today, but moving forward, I do a lot of work on this dot cam. So anything I do in the dot cam is not going to be in the slides, right? And so showing up to class to be able to get all of that information, that's going to be important, right? But the skeleton version of the slides, I think even, let me kind of show you here. I call them skeleton versions because like sometimes, yeah, like these are blank. That means I'm probably going to be writing something in class, right? But you're not going to have that unless you show up to class, okay? So I'll always post that. Oops, there we go. The week before. Also, another thing that I will do, get this out of the way. You'll kind of notice already I have Zoom being annoying and being in the way. But I always start it at the beginning of class. And to be fully transparent, occasionally there'll be audio issues. I walk around a lot. I know the audio's up here, so sometimes you're not be able to, I'm walking over here, might not be able to hear me as well. It's only going to screen capture. You've already got the slide file. I mean, you can see the slides already if you really wanted to. It's not going to capture anything that I do here on the dot cam. So they're not really perfect substitutes for class. They're very weak substitutes, what we would call them in economics for class. But if you happen to have to miss class, if you're getting close to exam, you want to review a topic that we talked about. Oh, I remember him saying something. I'll always have these class recordings and I post them. I put the link to the YouTube playlist. But another easy way to find it, you just go to YouTube, you search Professor Lantis. So like Atlantis without the at. I'm still the first person that pops up. I mean, 182 subscribers. I'm starting to get somewhere, right? So playlists, you'll kind of see I've got 2 sections this semester for 251. I've got a video up there right now, which is like, hi, you're on the ECON B251, right? It's just some dumb video I posted just so I could get a link to put into the slides. After today's class, I'll probably delete that and then put up today's recording. Now, I might not always do that the day of class. Like I might not do that until tomorrow, right? So they're not going to be put up like immediately sometimes, but they always will get posted within 24 hours to this YouTube playlist for our class. And you can always go back and kind of look at them, or if you miss class, kind of review them, okay? This is a great still with me, I guess. So, any questions over anything up to this point? Also, I had a template file. This is what, 9237, if I remember right? Yeah. I'll update that when I get back to my office today. But right, this section is 9237. Questions on that before we keep moving here? Shouldn't be too bad yet. So what do you care about, right? How are you going to be graded in this class? So admittedly, it's pretty heavily graded from exams, right? So 69% of your overall grade comes from exams. Okay? So what's it going to look like? 2 midterms we're going to take in class, right? So I've got the dates later on that I'll show you. It'll be good, I get those to you ahead of time so you can really make sure you don't have any conflicts with those dates, because we will be taking them during our regularly scheduled class period on Thursdays. 2 Thursdays during the semester, not every Thursday, right? There's only 2 midterms, okay? The final is going to be worth a little bit more because it's really like a comprehensive. I always get this question, is it a comprehensive final? It's not comprehensive in the sense I'm going to ask you the types of questions I did in week 2 or 3, but this class continuously builds on itself. So that module 10 is using things that we did in module 3, right? So it also has a few more questions. We have 2 hours to take it instead of the hour and 15 that we have for class. And so it's going to be weighted a little bit heavier. Okay. So a lot of the points in this class are going to come from exams. That means that you need to take the exams very seriously. Okay. Especially that first one, all right, because it only gets harder. All right. So if you take that first exam very seriously and you do well, it makes the rest of the semester a lot easier for you. Okay. We're also going to have Canvas quizzes, and I'll go through each one of these additional categories more in depth here in a second, just outlining it for now. 15% of your overall grade. Every single week, we'll have a Canvas quiz, right? That'll be over that week's module. So when I say module, we're going to cover essentially like a chapter each week, okay? Small caveat, 2 of the chapters that are in that e-text I combine into one later on in the semester, but that's like weeks 5 and 6, so we don't have to worry about that for now. But every week, we'll cover a module or a chapter of that e-text, and we'll take a quiz over it, okay? So at the end of the semester, 15% of your overall grade is going to come from those quizzes. Okay? We're going to have this platform called Packback. So I'll mention more about that in a second as well. It's going to kind of be this kind of discussion-based platform. Has anybody used it in other classes? Couple of hands. So we'll use that. It's going to be 8% of your overall grade. We'll end up going, once again, more in depth later, but these class readings or module questions are going to be like questions over each chapter that we cover, 4%, and then in-class participation or attendance is going to be another 4%. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of your grade that comes from these other categories, but the Packback module readings or class readings and these in-person class participation quizzes or attendance quizzes that I take, they're almost purely effort-based. If you simply put a moderate amount of effort into them, you can get the vast majority of the points in those categories, which that's already kind of giving you a pretty good, a pretty good start, right? Like if I look at averages, as long as people are putting in the time and not missing assignments, they're getting the majority of these points here, which is what I would say 16%, right? So that's purely just getting on and getting something done. Right? Now, these quizzes I'll mention later on, they're pretty heavily effort-based as well, as long as you take them seriously. And so really these categories are going to be reflecting a lot more of the effort that you're putting into class, right? Just like in life, you're rewarded for effort, right? You're also rewarded for how well you do things, right? So part of your grade is going to come from how much effort you're putting in, but, this is college, right? Life is cruel, right? Once you get out there in the real world, and a lot of your grade or a lot of your pay or salary or whatever is going to come from your performance as well. And so it's kind of how I have that reflected in your grades, okay? So let's go through these a little bit more in detail, right? So these Canvas quizzes, I mentioned like every week we're going to cover a different like module or chapter, right? So week 1's the easy one. It's chapter 1. We'll go through it really quick. So after Thursday's class period, so you're lucky because you're the later section. I'm going to have a little bit of a buffer, but after we get done with class at 11:30, these quizzes will be made live, right? Or they'll be posted up, or they'll show up on Canvas to you. So after Thursday's class, you'll see the first week's quiz or the module 1 quiz. You will then have until the end of the day, the following Monday to complete it, right? So the end of the day or 11:59 on that following Monday. Once you start, you'll have 60 minutes to complete it, right? Which means that if it's due at 11:59 on Monday, you have to start it by 10:59. Right? You have 1 hour to complete once you start. So this will be the setup every week for the remainder of the semester, with the exception of you don't have a weekly quiz after an exam, right? Because we didn't cover new material that week, we took an exam. Okay? And every other week, you'll have a module quiz over that week's material due on that following Monday. Okay? Now, if it's wake up Tuesday morning, I forgot to do the quiz, I'm not going to accept any late quizzes. There's no getting 50%. There's no, I've heard all these weird terms. Well, this professor let me do this, that. Well, that's not me, and that's not the real world, right? If you don't get your, if you don't fill your shipment order to a specific company on time, they're not going to give you a 50%, and they're not going to pay you, and they're going to move on to the next company. So, we've got, to make sure that we're really locked into these due dates and we're getting things turned in on time. Okay. So 11:59 on Monday nights, you're always going to have one of these quizzes due. okay? Now, I get that things happen. It's easy to forget things, especially when this isn't your only course. And so even though we're going to have 12 modules essentially that we cover throughout the semester, or 12 quizzes, I'm only going to take your best 10, right? So that means if they're a total of 15% of your overall grade, and I have this broken down in the Word document of syllabus, like my brain, I like to think of percentages. You can break all these grades down in terms of points. So there's like 1,000 possible points in this class, right? So you can just kind of translate that to percentages. But if that's 15%, that would be 150 of those 1,000 points come from the quizzes. That means each quiz is worth 15 total points. Now, I said there's 12 quizzes. I'm only taking your top 10. Whoops. Did I not put it in here? Oh, I thought I had another bullet point. That means that I'm doing what? Dropping your 2 lowest. Okay. So even though you'll have 12 possible quizzes you can take within the semester, I'm only going to take your best 10. Now, that doesn't happen until the end of the semester, right? If you miss the first quiz, that 0 is going to be counting towards your grade until we get to the end of the semester, and then I can identify what your 2 lowest quiz grades were and then drop them. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean I would just like choose not to do a quiz 1 week, because these quizzes are not just like get on and you get full points. You have to get all the questions correct. So I would try to take all 12 so that if I didn't do so well on 2 of them, those are the ones going to get dropped. I'm just mentioning the zeros, like worst case scenario, you know, if you do miss one, that will definitely be one of the ones that gets dropped. Okay. Any questions on that before we keep moving? Is that clear? Also, stop me at any point if I don't say something, or something doesn't make sense. Am I speaking loud enough for you guys in the back? Okay. I'm always worried about rooms like this, how my voice travels. Okay. Just to mention these quizzes. So let's go to Canvas. You can't see them yet, but I've already got the first 2 kind of up there ready to go. I actually got all the other ones somewhere else. I just slowly add them in. I try to kind of do things like as we talk about things in class, I cater some of the questions. I've got banks, so I try to, you know, have this, I don't have everything ready to go day one because I like it to be kind of like a living, breathing kind of thing, right? Where I'm actually asking you questions, not just what I thought I was going to do at the beginning of the semester, but what we actually did that week, right? So those quizzes, after Thursday's class, you'll see this first one pop up. Okay, and it'll be due Monday, right? The 20th before, you know, we start with, you know, the day before next Tuesday's class. Okay. All right. So those are the quizzes. We're also going to have 5 pack-back assignments throughout the semester. So I'll go over these a little bit more in depth and detail once that first one is posted, which should be after next Thursday's class. So not next Thursday, like not 2 days from now, but next week's Thursday's class, right? So these are really meant to kind of have and create some discussion amongst you guys, applying the topics and concepts we talk about in class, so like real world issues. So what these will usually look like is I'm going to post like this initial guide post, I think is what they call it on the platform, or it's basically I'll put some links to like different articles. I'll kind of give some little summaries, my thoughts or my questions that I kind of have related to these issues. And then what you will first do is post your initial, what we'll call your initial question. Now, I don't call it a question, I'll kind of call it your initial response, because it really is your response to this huge guide post that I put. The reason why the platform calls it a question is because what this is supposed to do is try to kind of create some back and forth so we can kind of analyze these real world issues. And it's easier to respond to someone if they ask a question as opposed to a statement. So I'll give you an example. If I was to say, okay, LA should have spent more money on their fire department, that would have led to lower, lower the cost from this recent fire. Okay. Now I can respond to it and say, well, it might not have, but that's a statement. It's a lot harder to respond to than if I said, well, what would, how many dollars would have been saved if LA had converted some of the funds for infrastructure for roads towards their fire department, and how might that result in a higher overall level of total utility or a lower level of total utility? Some of these terms you might not know yet, but I'm trying to phrase this kind of as how would this? how might this, could this do it? Kind of create, phrasing it as a question so that someone could then respond to that. So your initial response or your initial post to what I put up there, all these links and kind of my initial questions, that'll be worth kind of half the points. And then a quarter of the points will come from two other responses to another student's response. So all of you will post one response to my initial prompt. That's half the points for the assignment. You will then respond to two other students' responses. Those will be the other kind of 2/4 of points of the assignment. Once again, I'll walk through this more. We'll walk through the platform more in depth next week once I have the actual assignment kind of deployed. But we will have 5 of these throughout the semester. They're approximately every 2 to 2.5 weeks. Kind of gets weird around exam dates. But once I post them, usually they'll pop up like on a Tuesday or a Thursday. I'll give you at least a week and a half to 2 weeks to kind of complete it. I generally try to keep the due dates on a Friday, just to kind of keep it consistent. These pack back assignments are always due on a Friday, but I always post announcements. I'm not just going to like put them up there on Canvas and hope that you see them. Like I'll mention them in class. I'll put up an announcement, letting you know with the due dates. We will have 5 of them throughout the semester. Like I said, the first one, we'll talk about it more in class next Thursday. So what this is, the purpose of this, I'll be completely transparent. I didn't think of incorporating this initially. I saw some other professors do it, and I think that it has some real value because it takes like what we're talking about in class, and it really tries to apply it to like real applications, but it also gives you guys some skills and some practice of talking through issues with other people. I've got a spiel later on a little bit about this, right? Like there's never usually a right or wrong answer to every single question. A lot of times we're just analyzing different aspects of it. And that kind of plays out with these pack back assignments. So 8%, pretty high amount of your overall grade for literally, there's no right or wrong answer. If you get on and make these prompts and you make these questions, you get the points. Now, there is a thing that we'll talk a little bit next week about. It's called like a curiosity score. So it's like an AI that measures like you're not just getting on there and typing one sentence. Right, like evaluates how well thought out and how much time. It's a way of measuring how much time and effort you're putting into these posts, and it has to meet a certain minimum. But really, it is pretty much purely effort based. Right, so these should be easy points for everybody to get. Okay. Excuse me. Any questions on that? So similar to the quizzes, due dates are important. Late assignments aren't accepted. They count as zeros. Okay. So I don't want to get emails. You miss one. Can you give me 50%? No. Right. These due dates are hard and fast. You either turn it in before the due date. If you turn it in after, it's a zero. Okay. All right. Questions on that before we keep moving here. So one thing that I'll mention here, and I'll try to have this ready Thursday. I forgot that this can happen to some people. If you go to the Canvas webpage and you click on this pack back link on the left-hand side, it should take you to kind of the platform. I'm already signed in. You would have to kind of walk through and register. For a lot of you, it'll automatically sync up as long as you register with your IU email address. For some people, it doesn't. Like your computer will block pop-ups and do some goofy things. And instead of like trying to look at every single person specifically, there's a way that you can kind of sign up and link your account by, instead of going through Top Hat, simply going to packback.co. The only problem is you need kind of going in here and going through a process of logging in and registering the first time. The only problem is using a community lookup code if you don't